money has one problem. It works for a certain period of time, and then it doesn't work at all.
We're more motivated to do something if we know the purpose of it in life.
I'm a structure fan. I'm a minimum viable structure fan, as we talk to people, and I think it comes the same when we talk about the team as well.
My name is Jaroslaw Harezlak.
I'm Kamil Kramicz.
I'm a professor of biostatistics at Indiana University in the United States.
I'm a supply chain expert with a focus on global transformation projects.
I primarily deal with more efficient use of data coming from medical experiments.
I'm passionate about leadership, continuous improvements, and culture in the global business landscape.
So just wanted to say that all the opinions in this podcast are our own, and they do not represent the institutions that we're associated with.
I mean, if you look at the histories of some of the biggest, the biggest inventors in the world, they weren't. If you go, you always see those people, and you know their names, and you sort of link them with these big inventions, and I guess in business as well, like Steve Jobs, or the big names that you have there. When you go into when you read the book, around their life, and you find out that they quite often weren't, and how to put it in the best sentence, in a diplomatic way. They wouldn't fit the natural sort of a character that you would follow during normal days. And I always had this assumption that the world of science is actually full of people like that, and you talk a lot about the team and the team effort. I'm actually quite surprised how similar it is to the world of business and sports, I guess, at the same time.
So again, let me go to sports first. There are sports where you play. If you have a tennis match, it's like one-on-one. It's about you. Yes, it's about your play. If you play doubles, that already changes. And usually, I've seen actually, I just recently went to a tennis tournament. One of the best kind of single tennis players, when she played in doubles, she was good, but there are other rules. You have to collaborate. You have to, it's even with two people, you have to make a team. Yes. In science world, I think this has changed a bit. We have, you would have your Einstein, great ideas and so on, and it's kind of one person. But these days, I have to say there's much more of collaborative work, and there actually is a lot more of teamwork. It's not that there's this one person, one genius who leads something and everybody works for them. It's it's a team of people. Of course, you still need somebody leading, but sometimes the ideas come from team members. Sometimes even the direction of your lab or of your enterprise changes because of the composition of your team. I have to tell you, my research about 10 years ago, I started a new area of research, and I think I'm mildly successful in that area because of the people I was working with, where I didn't have the skills. I wouldn't be able to do it without them.
Right. Okay. So it's massively changing now. I mean,
it has, and it's like the enterprises that are now, you see like Nobel Prize winners, and it's like one name or two names, but very often it's the whole team of people behind them.
Yeah, it was like I don't know if you've seen the TV show Chernobyl, the new one, and they showed that I think it was a scientist from Belarus. Actually, today's Belarus, obviously. And it was shown as a one person there for the sake of the movie, and then at the end they said like this person represents a number of scientists that committed into this bit. Oh, okay. So I mean that's once again an example of where the I mean, the worlds aren't that different. I mean, it starts to look like,
It's,
we're all human beings. And
yes,
actually,
yeah. And especially when we went to motivation, I think this meaning, I think that's going, really kind of outside even of what we do kind of work-wise. We're more motivated to do something if we know the purpose of it in life. Yes,
Right.
that's.
Yeah.
But still going a bit to this kind of the skill set versus the attitude. You still need some, and it depends on the project, but you still need a minimal skill set.
Of course.
And now the balance between, like, I don't know how big your teams are for the projects. I think at the maximum, I worked maybe with 7-8 people at once. And this was, for me personally, this was too big.
Ah, okay.
This
That's
was in my
interesting.
world because it was all research. I can't keep thinking about 5-6 ideas simultaneously. I can work on like 2-3 bigger ideas at the same time. I mean, during the same time period. If it's more than that, I know I'm underselling certain areas. I just can't. It's like, for me, mentally, it's not possible to spread myself, we call it, too thin.
Right.
Because then I know I'm not, I can't put my best effort into too many things at once.
But is that your personal sort of approach, or would you say this is a bit of it is personal, or would you say this is the efficient, like, size of a team in working on a science project is probably shouldn't be too big, too large?
I don't want to make generalizations
Right.
because I know I have this collaborator who, we worked together like 15 years ago. Now we kind of came back to work again on a project. And his team is like 50 people or something. And he can do it.
Okay.
So, and actually he works on projects, on like 10 different projects with multiple teams around the world. And there's even a kind of a joke going around, if you really want to spend some time with him, you go on a trip with him, because then when you are sitting waiting for a plane or on a plane, you have time to discuss. I can do it. But this is personal.
Right.
And it also depends on the field.
Right.
Because if you have like a biological lab where you need to do experiments, you need to run experiments, of course your team will be bigger, because actually you need somebody in the lab doing experiments. I don't do that. I usually work with people who collect data, so it's this one step. It's not there, so I don't need huge teams.
You don't need, and then the layers and the whole structure behind it as well. No, that makes it just triggered the thought around the size of a team as well, and a perfect one. And I don't think there is a perfect one. You've asked me how big are the projects. It really depends on the project. There's and in the previous episode we've talked about the fat in the project as well, and I think it links very, very nicely. The more layers you have, the more, well, the bigger the project, and it might be actually just one topic, but it's just so huge and there's so much work to it that you need to start to add all of the layers. And then when you think about choosing the team and who do you have, that's just an equation to solve, which is just I don't think it's solvable, to be quite honest, in a very simple way. We're talking a lot about like projects because that's what we do. But if you think around choosing the team and around choosing the right people and the right skill set as well, you said there needs to be a minimal thing. I'm actually quite surprised how we are not talking about the skill set. We sort of land in this attitude thing, but I know sometimes it's really important. I mean, sometimes, mostly, you have to have the skill set in the team for people. Almost get it as a given. I remember us talking as well, and would keen to know your opinion about how a team needs to change maybe as the project goes on and gets through different stages of its maturity or things like that. Because I think you once said to me, you need different people in a different moment of
Yeah.
a project as well. Yeah.
So it's, in my world at least, there is, I mean, if I don't have ideas, if we don't work on something, having an implementer on a team just doesn't make sense, because what do you implement? And actually I had such a situation. I had an idea, but it was like very fresh. And actually I hired a person who was more of an implementer. It's, you know, if things are worked out, this person could implement the solutions, like program and so on. But this wasn't the right time. So it wasn't working very well. But then after a few months, I hired another person who I worked with on ideas more. And this third person, this changed the dynamic.
Okay.
And the project went beautifully since then. And it was just an amazing thing, like when you see when the things click. Because then actually, I worked, of course, with both of them, but I'm not trying to say this person was in the middle, but in a sense, we might be talking about ideas and then implement, and it was kind of that everybody was in the right place at the right time.
And you could feel that, yeah.
So it's this beautiful thing that, you know, might happen, and it doesn't happen often.
Right.
But when things click, this
Flows.
is just the flow.
The
Yes,
team
yeah.
flows.
Yes,
Yes,
yeah.
I know. And it's not easy to achieve. And I completely agree. It's it has its moment in time, but it's not going to last forever. Absolutely.
Yes, this is also this dynamic thing. And to tell you the truth, so sometimes you think, like, you read those stories, or, you know, all people work together for like 3 decades or something like that. That's, even in the science world, that's not super common.
Okay.
I have to say, I have maybe 1 or 2 people that I worked with for a very long time. And then, you know, there are different periods of time. Sometimes we might work together, we might come back together. But this is something, yeah, it usually doesn't last as long. It's, you don't sign, you know, I will be with you for the rest of my life, you know, in good times and bad times. It's, you know, you come together for certain things and it just clicks, and then maybe you go apart and you come back or not.
Yeah. And I think that's a good, to create an environment when this type of work, you know, this type of approach to building team, and actually being okay with it, that you go separate and come back and do things. I think it actually helps, and it characterizes some really good and successful organizations that can do it quite agile, in an agile way, and quite, you know, dynamically around it. On this topic, do you in my latest sort of a career, I actually had 2 main moments in my life when I didn't choose my team. The team was chosen for me. So the type of a task, without going into a massive amount of detail, or a project required representation of different functions within the business. And I work with some transformational projects and bits which require representation of a skill set, and actually, you know, the knowledge about the history or the business or the nature of it from different people. So where I quite often land is the team's there. I might have some choice. I might, you know, we might have a conversation, but actually you land in this bit. And that, for me, that creates a completely different angle around how do you do it. And I guess it would be interesting to know your perspective as well, because I always, again, assuming that the world of science will have quite a lot of that. I mean, you talk to different people around the world, you get in a bit of a, you get a bit of a knowledge from one place or a bit of work here and put it all together. Do you have any experience of how to make that successful?
So when it comes to people that I work directly with, and for me that's mostly like students or kind of postdoctoral fellows, that's usually I choose them, or, you know, we kind of, sometimes it's kind of matching or something like that, but it's more of a, it's not like a team is given to me. But when I collaborate with people, of course I have no control over who they work with. one of the things that I found very beneficial, but it's also not beneficial like in a kind of selfish way.
Right.
But I always, and this is one of the things that I make a point of when I meet new people, and they might be, undergraduate students or something that maybe I will know for half a year or a year, but I always make a point to get into this human relationship with them. That it's just, oh, you are somebody on somebody else's team. I don't have to have like a personal conversation with you or something. So this is, again, this is one of the things I learned. It's not, I'm not saying I was that, I of course, this is more human, but in a sense, I wasn't putting as much effort or as much time in developing these personal relationships with people, which now I do. And I think this goes back to kind of the motivation, the kind of why do they do certain things, because sometimes it might be, oh, I need something. And if they say, oh, there's this guy who wants something, but I have no idea what this is, what's the purpose, it's just busy work for me, that makes a big difference.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. Again, coming back to the purpose, I guess, and the thing, if it's really clear and if it's really there, it's easier. But it's actually sometimes, I like to let a little bit of the team dynamic go. So especially in the situations like that, I almost like not try to put too much sort of a structure around how do we interact together. And to your point around creating this human interaction bit, it's actually quite good to, work on capitalize on the diversity that we actually have, and actually look a little bit, learn where the strengths are, and then give it a bit of time to actually get to the point, rather than getting in and trying to put everything there. You can see I'm a structure fan. I'm a minimal viable structure fan, as we talk to people, and I think it comes the same when we talk about the team as well. Yeah.
One of the things, maybe, if you don't mind, the last topic for this part, bonuses or bonus scheme.
I wanted to talk about money. To talk about money.
Well, but for me, it's not only money. That's why, if I may ask you, kind of, in your world, kind of what constitutes like bonus or like how do you motivate maybe in more physical realm?
Physical as less monetary, or
well, monetary as well, but also are there other, like when we say bonus, it's usually like money, but is there something else that kind of makes people think that that make them feel their worth?
Yes. There's one particular. I have a good example to talk about, which we were implementing, and it's something that is staying with me, and I'm keeping it, the principle around it, as we go through, it's absolutely not monetary. It's not a bonus, and we can talk about money, and we can even have a different episode on that. Money has one problem: it works for a certain period of time, and then it doesn't work at all. And it's very quickly disappearing. What I find, and again, it depends where and for who, but what I find is quite common and very useful bit that is helping out, especially in the places where motivation isn't as easy or as obvious as you can have, is the ability to actually make a difference. And what I mean by that, I'm sure you heard about the sort of methodologies like Kaizen or lean manufacturing. So Kaizen being a system or a thing you create that you reward people for small improvements. You basically you allow and you encourage everyone at every level to get the work environment or the process or the quality or whatever else you have over there, make it a little bit different. And by adding those small steps to a process or to your continuous improvement agenda, what you'll find out is that in 5 or 10 years, you're actually like one technological step ahead of the other business because you do it. But when I say rewarding people, I mean there's quite often a financial reward connected to that, or there's some savings, there's some percentage of savings and other things. But what works in this case much more is actually giving the people the ability to influence the environment they work in, and see a certain project, a certain small little thing that they come up with working and making their life, another life easier, and the actual pride of inventing something and implementing something, which is really, really good. So I'm struggling to put a one sort of a name of it or a one word for it, but I would get it to a point around, if you can create an environment where people can state the problems freely, and then what is even more important, have the power, tools and freedom to act upon it, obviously in a safe way, actually making that happen and making sure that those projects are actually there and are working. What is really important, they need to be implemented. They can't be just ideas. They need to be implemented. What you're going to find out, you're creating a flowing team. You're creating a team that feels a purpose, that feels that they're doing something important, and actually it works far better than just giving a few dollars or a few pounds for doing it, because it also works on frustration. Because if you think about it, if you have an issue, I don't know, a polished train is a good example. The old polished trains, there was a few things which were never working: heating, air conditioning, and stuff like that. If you sit there and you look at it and say, like, this is so stupid, I can't do anything about it, your frustration level goes like this, and you start to blame the government, blame the railway system and whatever, and just sit in there, and it creates this sort of a negative kind of a vibe to it. If you could fix it, you'd probably fix it and be happy about it. You'd tell your friends about how you fix it. And then if you could actually share that fix, which was really easy with all of the other people around it, or even with the National Railway, maybe they could implement it and fix it for everyone else. And then if you'd see it, that your fix is on all trains later on, you'd be so proud. And you didn't make a dime on it. You're just there. So I think if I had to choose one, that's the main sort of a principle. When you say bonus, for me, this is a big thing. If you can make people, can create an environment where actually your team can influence the environment. Yeah.
It's actually funny you say that, because for me, and this is I never truly worked in a company. I've been in academic environments pretty much my whole life. It's this idea of bonus was always at the end of the year or something like that, you get a bonus, you get like monetary bonus because of how the company worked, how the maybe company performed in the market value of the company has risen, and you give people bonuses. But so this is actually interesting, because in academia, it's very hard to give kind of monetary rewards. It's much more regulated, and you can't. I mean, we don't have bonuses at the end of the year, but there are other things that can be done. So, for example, like this changing environment. So there are, just to give you an example, we work a lot with computers, be it laptops, desktops, and so on. But creating an environment that, let's say, somebody says, well, I really like this monitor, I really like big monitors. And the university says, no. By regulation, this is the monitor you get, that's all. Well, I will, for example, buy it from my research account, because I know it will make a big difference to them, and it's not a big cost. Yes, so it's something like going beyond what's kind of given. Or, for example, another thing, and this is great for networking, going to scientific conferences. This is something, again, there are very limited resources, but this is like a win-win-win situation. Why am I saying that? It's a win for, let's say, a student who can build a network because they are in a much bigger research environment. It's a win for me as their supervisor, because I'm also showing, look, I have great students. When they're looking for jobs, it would be great, and they can share their research, they can get comments on their research, and it's a win for them. It's also a win for my department, my school, my university in general, because it's like, okay, student from this university is presenting work at a national meeting.
And raising profile of
yes.
all of these elements you've mentioned, yeah. It's good that you say that, because the one thing which I haven't said about in this equation of changing your environment, the actual upskilling is a big thing, and especially in like manufacturing areas, and it closes it nicely with the conversation we had on attitude as well, because then, you know, sometimes you can't influence your environment because you just don't have the skill set. And I was once, I told you about an example that I'm going to say. I was once in a company in Switzerland. I can't remember I sincerely can't remember the name. They were making like assembly of sensors and some electronic sort of elements, very make to order kind of approach. And they would have they could upskill themselves, so they could have a budget for themselves to actually get their skill set in certain elements to do. And it was different stuff. And the whole factory, including the offices and everything, was on wheels. I mean, the plants, pots were on wheels. Why? Because you can change it really quickly. The whole floor, I think there was like 3 or 4 floors, and they all had like this net of compressed air and electricity system that you can connect really easily from the top and then go down. And they also had like these stations with I think it's called Bosch profiles. They're aluminium profiles, quite of a standard wise, which you use to build. You can build whatever you want with it, like a more sophisticated Lego bricks, let's call it, or something. And they had this station that you can come in, and it had some tools that you can create your own little, you know, widget or the thing that would help you out to do certain stuff. The teams managed the free time, the shifts altogether. The management didn't come into that. Obviously, it was at a level of, a level of the lean culture at a very high level, and it had a very specific profile of employees as well. But it was all very, you know, it was changing your environment, taken to a completely different level. And then what is really important, it also upskilled. So you could actually, you know, I want to do that, but I don't know why. And it might not be directly connected with the thing that you do. So, you know, you're not just you're, for example, a mechanical engineer, and you want to learn some of the electrical stuff that you do. You enable that thing to do. So it's really, I think it's connecting quite nicely to the thing that I said. Let's open up. Let's gain more experience with other people. Let's meet with people. Let's share that idea, because it helps. Well, it helps everyone. So yeah, again, more similarities than differences. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you find the topics in the discussion interesting, please do subscribe and push the subscribe button, because that will allow us to make many more interesting subjects into our conversation.
Yeah, we will have guests, we will have, we'll talk about other interesting topics, so let us know. What do you think?
Let us know what you think and push that button, please.